We do believe that this is a chemical attack by the Assad regime.
This is a war crime.
The world needs to see the use of chemical weapons. It will not be tolerated.
The Ghouta attack wasn't the only time chemical weapons were used in the Syrian war, but it was the deadliest. More than 1,000 people were killed. So far, not one person has been held accountable for the deadly chemical attack on Ghouta. In this video, we want to work out why that is, and why courts in Germany could play a decisive role in determining who was responsible for the attack and bringing perpetrators to justice. Let's first take a look at the situation in August 2013. For weeks, forces loyal to President Bashar Assad had tried to capture rebel-held areas in Ghouta right outside of Damascus. But they failed to do so. On the night of August 21st, at least 4 rockets loaded with chemical weapons struck eastern Ghouta. Syrian journalist Taher shared his videos with us. He survived the attack and filmed the desperate situation at the hospitals.
ما بنعرف شو عم بيصير، لكن الخوف أول شيء انتابني، مسكت الكاميرا هيك إني أنا بدي صور، بعدين سكرت، شفت الأطفال عم بتموت قدامي، بعدين فكرت منيح إنه أنا إذا ما صورت مين حينقل هاي الأحداث اللي هلا عم بتصير للناس.
Days after, Taher was still on the streets of eastern Ghouta. He filmed impact sites, missile remnants, mass graves, and interviewed many witnesses. His goal: collect as much evidence as possible.
لو إنه النظام قدر فعلاً إنه يقتحم المنطقة لكانت الجريمة محت اندثرت، ما كان طلع أي خبر عن الجريمة، لأنه النظام بيكون سيطر على المنطقة وخفى الأدلة إلى آخره.
These are the images that shook the world. Amid growing international pressure, Assad eventually allowed UN inspectors to visit Ghouta. They collected rocket fragments and soil samples and came to the conclusion that the deadly nerve agent sarin was used in the attack.
If you don't have a mask, you don't come close.
In their report, UN inspectors were unable to name suspected perpetrators because their mandate wouldn't allow for it. Meanwhile, the Syrian government has consistently denied any involvement in the brutal attacks. But the US upped pressure on Syria and its closest ally, Russia. By September 2013, the UN Security Council passed a resolution that committed Syria to destroying its chemical weapons stockpile. The Assad regime could do little more than agree, and Syria joined the Chemical Weapons Convention.
Today's historic resolution is the first hopeful news on Syria in a long time.
But a confidential report produced by human rights groups and seen by DW describes how the Syrian regime likely maintained components and facilities required for the production of chemical weapons, even after they were banned under the Chemical Weapons Convention. The report details sites where the nerve agent was stored and produced. It even names the institution that enabled the secret chemical weapons program: the Syrian Scientific Studies and Research Center. Its facilities are located across the country. The report also suggests that Syria continued to produce chemical warfare agents after 2013.
We've shown that Syria retains a robust chemical weapons program. So we found that immediately after the August 2013 attack, they began relocating their chemical stockpiles and essential equipment. And we found the relocation of specific chemical weapons production facilities to new sites that had not been disclosed.
Throughout our investigation, we repeatedly requested comment from the Syrian embassy in Germany, but we never received a response. Allegations that Syria secretly continued its chemical weapons program are given further weight by ongoing chemical attacks on rebel-held territories after September 2013, when it joined the convention. Human rights groups have attributed more than 200 chemical attacks to Syrian government forces. The OPCW, the world's leading chemical weapons watchdog, has investigated many of those attacks. Their efforts have mainly focused on analyzing the chemicals used. The investigations have found unique compounds to the sarin samples gathered in the wake of these atrocities. This is important because these unique compounds are crucial in determining who exactly produced it. It is in effect a chemical fingerprint. The OPCW has also examined samples from the 2017 sarin attack on Khan Sheikhoun. The findings of a joint UN report said with confidence Syria was behind the attack. For the Lata Mena attack of 2017, an OPCW report made it even clearer, saying units within the Syrian Air Force dropped the bombs. Despite the growing body of evidence, the UN Security Council has been unable to take action. Even attempts to refer the attack to the International Criminal Court have failed. Russia repeatedly vetoed punitive measures.
Those against?
How could anyone look at the faces of lifeless children and choose to veto a resolution condemning those deaths? It is indefensible that Russia has chosen to protect the perpetrators of these attacks.
So is there any way to bring the perpetrators to justice without going through the UN Security Council? Rights groups are increasingly taking their fight for justice to national courts, where universal jurisdiction applies, such as in Germany. Universal jurisdiction applies to crimes such as genocide, war crimes and crimes against humanity. They can be prosecuted regardless of where and against whom they were committed. This is why Germany's federal prosecutor has been investigating atrocities in Syria for the better part of a decade. Following several cases linked to torture in Syrian prisons, 3 rights groups have for the first time filed a criminal complaint in Germany concerning the use of chemical weapons. The complaint is accompanied by extensive documentation of the attacks, including how they took place and who was likely responsible. For years, Syrian archive founder Hadi al-Khatib worked with the other human rights organizations on the criminal complaint. Together, they interviewed eyewitnesses and analyzed thousands of documents, images and videos of the sarin attacks in Ghouta and Khan Sheikhoun.
For the prosecutor to understand what he's seeing.
The material was archived to make it easier for prosecutors to access and review.
We don't use videos that are not verified. We need to verify it, and this is by itself is a big challenge. We need to verify date, time, location, any objects that we can see in videos itself. The other part is definitely, it is challenging to find witnesses, to find defectors, and to make sure that also they are feeling safe to talk about the incidents.
The material accompanying the criminal complaint includes statements from 50 defectors with first-hand knowledge of Syria's chemical weapons program. They describe the possible chain of command for a sarin attack and even name suspected perpetrators, including Syrian President Bashar Assad and his brother Maher.
We have one witness who has described that the request for the use of sarin gas comes from Maher al-Assad and then is communicated to the presidential palace, where it is approved, we believe it is approved or ordered by Bashar al-Assad. Certainly, to convict any of those individuals of the crime, you would need additional evidence beyond this one witness, but we think the witness presents valuable evidence.
Federal prosecutors here in Germany confirmed to us that a criminal complaint was filed, but they would not comment on its contents. Instead, they said they would independently probe the evidence before deciding whether to open a case against individual suspects, but that can take weeks or even months. Now the major task is to determine who is legally responsible for the sarin gas attacks in Ghouta and Khan Sheikhoun. Under international law, those who launched the rockets aren't the only ones the court can hold responsible.
Also, people who have given orders to normal soldiers can be indicted because of this active ordering, or even if the person didn't order themselves, but they were aware or should have been aware of these attacks, but because of their function as a military commander, they can be held responsible.
Who had knowledge of the sarin attacks? Who authorized them? German prosecutors will now speak to witnesses who are part of the criminal complaint, such as Syrian nurse Iman. She is determined to testify about what she experienced that night in Ghouta 7 years ago. We meet with her and her husband Mohammed at an undisclosed location in Germany.
كان منظر يعني ما فيني أوصف لك إياه. الناس كيف كلها هيك مسطحة كأنك براشة على نمل بالأرض. والله العظيم ما بيروح من بالي هذا المنظر.
Her eldest son was killed in the chemical attack. She and her husband were unconscious for days. Still today, Iman suffers from nervous breakdowns and Mohammed is constantly worried.
أنا بتمنى إنه عند القاضي وهي شو وقول له شو صار معنا عم ضربة الكيماوي إن شاء الله يعني يدينوه. أنا بتمنى إنه يعني اللي حاكموه للأسف.
هي أمنيتي بالدنيا. يحاسبوه هو اللي كانوا معه. اللي ظلمونا وظلموا ناس كتير وظلموا أطفال كتير.
For now, German prosecutors are unable to touch Assad. As an acting head of state, he enjoys immunity from prosecution. But Iman and Mohammed are hopeful that evidence will now be validated in Germany. Evidence that one day could be used for an indictment, because for war crimes, there is no statute of limitations.